we're getting serious about it. All right, everybody likes.
I don't have a mic.
Mic's off. There you go.
My fun's in my car. He's good.
Just checking out here.
You're me today.
How you gonna need one for?
Like Freaky Friday. You're not.
Got it.
Brandy, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I sure can. Thank you.
All right.
Don't have any batteries.
Russ, do we have batteries anywhere?
Jack said he's not gonna talk, so it shouldn't matter.
Just mouth it.
Jack's having technical difficulties. Give us 1 minute.
I'm trying to date track.
Yeah, they don't need this to use. All right, here, I stick the batteries out and
I'm the only one that remembers the Ethan songs off the radio.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Plug the little tabs out.
Yeah.
Put over it.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. Angel, can you do a roll call for me, please?
Sure. Jack
present.
Laughlin, Greg Filak,
Here.
Cassandra Starks,
Here.
Tom Tuzen,
Here.
and David Hume.
What did you say? Say watch for the pledge of allegiance, but I'll give you 10 seconds. Loud though. Everybody can rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So everyone, obviously this is the workshop. I sent out the scope of services to everyone. The actual contract language is just the legalities of language that council, I don't necessarily know that it would change. But that's pretty standard boilerplate of that, and she makes sure to protect the district. So really, I sent you guys the scope to see if there's anything you want added to the scope, taken out of the scope, change of scope, anything like that. And that's kind of what this workshop was geared to do. And then anything that's talked about in this workshop, if there's something that needs a motion, it will have to wait until the meeting that starts at 6 o'clock.
Is there anything that would require a motion if we're just, if we're just all consenting on different things to add?
To the scope?
We don't need to vote on that.
No.
Okay.
What we would do is I'm going to take notes in the meeting. And if there's any changes to the scope, I would write them down. Jan would incorporate them into the actual scope of the contract, and then we would execute the contract accordingly. I mean, I can't imagine that there would be anything that you guys would want to add that Infomark would be like, meh, no. I can't imagine that. So I think it would go pretty smooth, depending on what you all want to see as far as scope. And then we would just incorporate that into the current scope and then execute the contract.
And last time we had, because we had, I think that, I won't say there were significant changes, but we changed how we structured it. We really did change the terms and conditions with the fine print piece.
Yes.
That's where Jan and I, the board had delegated for the chair to work with Jan and Infomark to negotiate. I don't know if we need to have that or not. If these just become scope of work changes, those are probably relatively simple. If you start getting into the terms and conditions, that may
So
complicate it.
the terms and conditions that the board authorized Greg and Jan were, it's Infomark typically has a 3% increase. That was negotiated to a 2% increase every year. So that was one of the terms and conditions. The other was the rent that we pay, which I think is a separate contract. I don't think it's all in
It's an
one.
addendum.
Yeah, it was an addendum that, and I can't remember. We can look at that too. But that would be for Jan, as far as you guys, if you want to see that increase. I think it increased
We change it to the
whatever the,
federal, not cost of living, what's the escalation? CPI.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's what we did for the rent that we pay for this
So that
building.
was my question, because what I got sent, it just said it was a flat 2% per annum. And
That's for the contract. Because management, we usually charge, our standard is 3% every year on our contracts. But the board negotiated with Infomark to just do a 2% increase.
It wasn't that it was every year we analyze CPI and then escalate it.
Yeah.
We based the 2% number based on CPI. That's how we came.
Yeah.
To that.
So if it needs to be higher, and we can write that in, you know, if Jan didn't write it in, I don't have the contract in front of me, but if that's something you all want in there, we can put that.
just for what I was sent was the administrative facility use agreement.
Yep.
And
That's
section
it.
1.9 for base rent, sets a baseline and says it will increase every year 2%.
And we did the same thing on the master contract itself with their costs. We just, Jan and I agreed that, hey, if we're gonna go one way and charge and use CPI as the basis for the rate escalation on the facility, let's use the same rate escalation on the master contract. So and again, we can change that if we want to put it to an actual CPI number, and then, hey, at the end of each year, we go and find out what CPI is, we can adjust it to that.
Yeah,
We've done 2% just because I looked at the historicals, it's over, I think it's a 10-year trailing average I did, and come out to a 2% number.
the average when I looked at it was
A lot different.
3
Yes.
point something, so.
I like keeping it as
So
a
you'd rather
fix.
keep the 2% then?
I would keep it at the fix just because if nothing else for budgeting purposes, I don't want to have to sit here and wait till the federal government comes out with CPI averages. Let's just figure out what the fair number is and keep it at that.
And that's where Infomark, we did the standard 3% because we figured that's the mid ground of increases, what we do, but you all negotiated a 2% increase.
And then the other big change was we did do quite a bit of language around making sure that it became a performance-based contract as opposed to a
Body-based.
body-based contract. Yeah, we were as a board, I think we were getting too much into the inner workings of Infomark and how they do things and where they do things and staffing and salaries and all that. And we totally got out of that and just changed it to a fixed price number.
That's correct. Because I think prior boards, at least when Cliff Akey was on the board, we had to submit every agenda a org chart.
Yep.
With the actual names in there of employees and all of that stuff. And it was really a body-based contract where now it's scope-based, whether we can do it with one person or we have to get 30 people, it doesn't affect.
Yep.
We can't come back to you and go, hey, we want an increase because we need to add 10 more staff.
And that's where really the board, when we had a workshop on this a couple of years ago, that's where the board's input really came in with on figuring out the scope of work. And then that turned around and drove into the terms and conditions piece. So that would be my suggestion of where we start, is going to the contract scope of work piece and figuring out are there things we need to add, delete, change, whatever in their scope. And then overall, if it stays with the same construct of a performance-based contract as opposed to a body-based contract, which I would strongly recommend we stay that way, then that just goes to them to figure out, okay, do they need to dial the price up or down based on any scope of work change?
Yeah.
Okay, so
And we already did increase, by the way, in your budget, we increased the 2% that in our management contract piece, we already did that.
So if there occurs a project, we'll just say sidewalk repair. And we decide as a board to keep that in-house and add that to the scope of work to Infomark. How is the contract amended to reflect?
And you bring up a good point, and that was one of my
No.
suggestions, is right now it's not, and I
So-
think it should be. I think there should be an addendum to it. If there's a project-based initiative, that then becomes almost an element of the contract. We've got the master contract, whatever.
Every change order, it can whatever.
Correct, but that then becomes a project within it, because that's got a separate set of deliverables and schedules and everything else that's more specific. Because when you look at the language we have in here, just on sidewalks, it's a Infomark shall grind sidewalks, Infomark shall check sidewalks. But that doesn't really address, while they're performing within that today of the North Village piece, I don't think it cleanly contractually addresses the specific requirements, especially if we're gonna go year over year doing this of, hey, this year I want you to do a North Village, I want a price on that, and actually amending that into the contract. That would be my suggestion.
If you're gonna put that in the contract, that's totally separate because we currently do not have staff to do a large project like that. What is in the contract now are the safety hazards, the guys, we have 4 people dedicated for staff here, which again, I'm saying 4 people, it really doesn't have any bearing on you, but that do sidewalk grinding, that's all they do, fixing, one-off stuff. Large projects like the Celebration Boulevard that we contracted out to, I forget whoever,
K&D.
the other one, and then the one that Infomark, our field side, is doing now, that has nothing to do with your staff. If you're gonna put something like that in there, yeah, we would definitely have to sit down and really look and see, okay, does it take?
Why can't we just treat it as a separate contract?
We can't.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
I prefer to do
The
that.
board hired
We-
Infomark to do.
We
the
have a
side-
package of what you're expected to do, and
That's
anything
right.
above and beyond should be a separate contract.
Yeah, because right now, if we took people off to do like a sidewalk project like that, it would take your whole staff. to do it, and then other things wouldn't get done.
Right.
So, but yeah, we can actually do, that's what you did now. You contracted Infomark's field side that doesn't affect your everyday stuff, but we have more control over it.
If it works, don't try and fix it.
I'm just giving you the facts.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, you could do addendums if you wanted to do it that way, which is essentially what we're doing now. You budgeted X amount. The expectation is to get X amount during this set time for this set money.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what you're doing currently.
So if the board, like I said, my recommendation, the way we tackle was looking at the scope of work, and that was where I had a few comments. Does that kind of make sense to everybody, just to go around and?
What are your choices? What do you had?
Well, I mean, the few things I had, one was the Island Village growth.
Mhm.
So when you had priced this a couple years ago, obviously we were just getting an Island Village phase one.
Yep.
Expectations for growth of staff along those lines all the way through phase four, because the rest of this contract should cover probably most of the development of Island Village. So do you anticipate staff growth along with that?
When we
Yeah.
first negotiated this, when we first negotiated this particular contract, Island Village wasn't as far along as it is, and we had enough staff to cover that aspect. But now there's more going on, so it was 2 additional,
At least one right now.
and then maybe 1 when we come up for negotiation again. So we would add 1 more staff person for Island Village.
So you basically only had 2 for the entire year.
Mhm. Yep.
And what is the length of the contract then?
A
Well,
year,
What is it?
Well, it's,
every year.
Every year? So how many people going to be adding every year then?
Well, phase 2A and B, they want to start building, I want to say in November. And they're talking about knocking that place out,
Quick.
well, they
at
talked
least
about,
2A.
knocking phase one out quick.
So Russ, anticipating that, what do you need for your staff and
Well, one extra
2025.
person right now would be okay.
But how long
I
is that
think
gonna
it'd
get
be-
us to?
I think that probably might get us through the year, no problem.
So, and I think you asked the most important question. The first one is backing up.
Physical.
What's our intent of the length of the contract? Right now it's a 2-year contract. There's a base year and 1 option year that we've done on this.
An extension, right?
Correct.
Mhm.
I would suggest we make it long. And the reason I say that is, from our perspective, it's gonna lock in numbers.
Yes.
And if they know roughly, and again, I mean, Island Village is gonna be kind of plus or minus, there's gonna be some guessing
Yeah,
games there,
It's
but
not gonna be.
to the extent, I mean, if it's an average of, hey, 1 person per phase, and whatever the number is, you can kind of piecemeal that out. If we think we're gonna get a phase a year, a phase every 18 months. I just, knowing that the volatility and inflation and everything else, I would suggest we go longer than 2 years. I mean, I'd look at 4 or 5.
We
We've always
used to
got the
do
right to-
5-year.
I'd like
Yeah.
to do 5, but I'd like to put a little escalation in there that based on the number of units that are completed, we add people.
And we can add trigger points in there that,
That's what
hey,
I'm saying.
you know, it's not necessarily every year. It's based on when phase 2 comes on, when the district inherits phase 2 stuff, then you get the people.
Russ and Carrie meet with Island Village. Is it still once a week? Yeah, so they get a full update as far as what the building schedule looks like. And I mean, again, things can change, but so I think if you put trigger points in there where we could be able to add a staff member or coming to a meeting, having a conversation and saying, okay, we're at that milestone where we need to add another person and this is what it looks like, and you already have your pricing in there, then I think that would be the way to go, because it's hit or miss. We may not need, with what comes on, we may be able to have it covered. We may not need, even though you've given that authorization, we may not need to add another person. And I know Carrie and Russ are good about not adding extra staff if we don't need it, but so we may not.
So
Then we
which-
need to think about landscape too.
Mhm.
Well, that'll be separately. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been kind of doing those in addendum year over year. We just have the phases on. But if we
Yep.
can lock you guys in now, I'd like to do that. How does everybody feel about a 5-year as opposed to a 2-year?
But right now, we're at a 1 year.
No.
It's a 2-year contract. It was an initial 1-year scope with a 1-year option. We're finishing the end of the 2nd year right now.
Yeah.
We signed this in February of 2020.
Technically, this contract expires, and let's say we didn't have this workshop and you approved it in your budget with our 2% increase, and whatever, then all we would do is do an addendum to our master contract, extending it for however long. But if we're gonna make changes and you want a 5-year, then we would set it up that way. Or a 4-year or 3-year, whatever it is.
And
board
the key
wants.
is, I mean, too, it's.
It just
there's always-
locks in your pricing.
There's always the termination clause that's in the
Yeah,
contract.
that doesn't
At any point
change.
we want to go to RFQ or terminate stuff.
That's never going to change. All of your district contracts have that. With ours, I think it's a 60-day, but like landscape, ponds and all that, it's all 30-day. But I think management is 60 days because you have to have a management company.
Right.
So one can't leave without the other. So that's why it's a little longer. It's 60 days instead of 30, but you always have that. That will never be taken out. No attorney will ever let that happen.
Gary, did you have something?
Just for asking, since you're proposing a possible 5-year contract, do you remember why you only went with 1 year and 1 extension last time? What was
Because-
the rationale?
Because that's how it was always set up. It was always, I'm sorry, it was a 3-year contract we'd done.
It was a
We're-
3-year with
we're
a
into the
1-year
third.
extension, so it would be 4 years. Is what they typically had done prior to that Gary
Yeah.
had always done and the boards. But this year, when we negotiated this, I don't know that there was any reasoning for it. It was just kind of,
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
why-
that's what
why was it
what they
1
came
year?
up with.
There's,
Do you remember
there's
what-
nothing in state law. I know 720 for a homeowners association dictates it, but there's nothing in state law that I'm aware of
720 doesn't
For us.
dictate it. No, it's,
I'm just trying
that caps it.
doesn't.
to remember
no, it
why.
doesn't.
No, that's totally a board decision. You're not bound by any sort of statutes or anything.
Oh, good.
720 does not require you to do an RFP for management company.
No, you're under no, like I
No.
said, there's nothing that prohibits you from going out to RFP, but there's nothing that says you have to either. It's performance based. If you're not happy, then obviously you
You
find
got lied
another
to.
vendor.
By the borough board. Oh, wait, they've lied to you?
Anyway. Okay, so are we, is everybody okay with the, I mean, it would be a 1-year base with 4 1-year options. So every year it's coming up and you renew the contract and the pricing is set. And you just come up and as long as there's no challenges, then you're just bumping along with the next year.
That's it. That's all it would be. And your pricing is already established. So all I would do is go back now. Let's say you did that and there's no scope change or anything. Then we would put together the 4-year pricing, which essentially you already have it. It's going to be a 2% increase barring adding staff for Island Village. That's
Well,
really
I
the
would
only
suggest
thing.
on the length and timing would be if we can extend under the current contract for whatever that would be 6 months, because yours is the only contract that we don't have aligned to the fiscal year. You're aligned on February, everybody else is aligned on October.
Yeah. And I don't know why. And that was my
It was the timing.
Yeah, it was my argument of
Yeah.
doing this at the time that we did it, because technically, most of the time, when you approve your budget and we put in those numbers, you're essentially approving your contract to go on into the new fiscal year. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit wonky.
go like that? Start on October 1st.
You can put anything you want in the contract to say it starts, you know,
Would we go retroactive or we just go out and where we're at now?
I don't know.
Hold on.
Go ahead, wait.
Right now, it says December 1st on the contract.
yeah, they kept talking about it going back and forth, and Jan and Greg were working out the additional stuff of all this stuff, so we didn't sign it
The
until
final
February.
effective date was February 1st, because we got it approved in December from the board, and by the time we ended up getting through all the signatures and everything, the effective date was February.
Yeah,
But
that's why.
the contract is at December 1st.
Mhm.
Should align, I think it should align with our fiscal year.
Yeah, I agree.
So my only concern, Tom, with going backwards is we're already into the fiscal year, so now you're.
No, I just, however it'll work, but I think it should line up.
You wanna make it a 4.5-year contract?
No, you can still do a 4-year, but your start and end date is with the fiscal year. Start date would be October 1, end date would be September 30th of the following year. So you
Or we
just
could
follow the.
Or we
fis-
could just do the initial year would actually be like an 18-month initial.
It's like
Something like that.
whatever
Yeah,
you want.
whatever you want to do.
Whatever you
Okay.
wanna do, just do it.
We'll
Yeah.
figure that out.
Your budget, it doesn't affect your budget because your budget is fiscal year. So your budget number is going to be October 1 to September 30. So
Yeah, so just have the
That's
next
it.
term end September 30 blank,
that's right.
and then you'll start your 1-year
Okay.
options after that.
That's exactly.
Right, the only other question is, what are we using for the triggers? For, additional personnel? Are we gonna base on units or additional
As far as Mountain
properties?
Village,
Yeah,
I do it when we actually sign, over the property for Mattamy, because that's when we're taking responsibility.
To do that.
I mean, because at that point, we're really not maintaining anything. Russ is evaluating stuff and all that, but we're not responsible for maintenance until we sign it over.
That is correct.
Russ, is there an expectation of phase 3 and phase 4 when they'll take place?
They haven't started yet. They're wanting to bulldoze for phase 3,
But will that would happen within the 4-year contract?
Yes,
but I'm pretty sure it will.
yeah.
So then
If-
do you want to just base it on phases? then?
If sales go good.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the trigger point should be the phases, but when the
Okay.
phases actually come on board, if you can identify now, I'll make up a number. For each phase, you need an additional field person.
Mhm.
Just put that in the contract and then have
Right.
the date set of whenever the district assumes the ownership of those, for that
And
phase.
would it be more beneficial to you all for us to, okay, come, let's say the November meeting and I say, this contract's already done, and Carrie and Russ say, okay, phase 3's coming on, we're gonna need an additional person, this is what it's gonna cost, and you guys can approve it at that point, we just do an addendum to the master.
I would just price it now. If you know what the person's gonna be, why would we not just price it now? and have it-
Well, because it could be a different pay rate that comes in, I mean.
Could be a year
It
and a
could
half,
be,
2 years
yeah,
down
it
the
could
road.
be 2 years down the road, it could be anything, and I mean, with holding pricing for what we do, we can do that, but holding pricing for labor is a little different.
You never know, minimum wage might go $25 an hour.
Yeah.
As locking in pricing on everybody else.
On who?
I don't know.
On our guys? Right, because we're gonna take the hit on those people because they're already in your contracts.
Not when inflation goes down.
You win some, you lose some.
There you go.
I will get on my soapbox and say that philosophically, every contract I deal with that has any escalation always puts the CPI in there. as the
Yes.
baseline.
Right.
Yep.
I think this should be the same for across the board, both for this building and for the management contract, and that should apply if we do this for any other management or any other contract.
You wanna go with the actual CPI or you wanna take the average?
There is a CPI, there is standard block language in every contract I've seen. CPI has a baseline and then it references exactly where you go on the Fed in order to get CPI every year. They've got a very robust finance department that you become familiar with. I'm sure they can figure out the math every year.
I'm not sure they can or not. I mean, they couldn't figure out those crime statistics, so.
We got 39 minutes left here.
Okay.
You know what, for somebody who wasn't supposed to talk a lot, is it chat or chat or chat?
That was. the-
And that's
Oh,
typically what we do. We've always kept even our escalations in any contract, and either we miss or we hit it. We've always put a standard 3% because that pretty much stays right in the middle of inflation.
You're gonna By the averages.
Exactly. And that's what we do. But again, this board wanted us to do a 2%, which we were totally agreeable to, and we would be agreeable to again. But, and we can price it out, Greg, if
I
that's
mean,
what
if
the
it's-
board wants to see.
If it's a 2% versus a 3%, I mean, I'd be okay playing either way. But
Yeah, I don't.
what
think
makes
that
me
matters.
nervous about floating the actual CPI is come budget time. Now I've got a variable that I don't know what the CPI is until all of a sudden we get into the contract. Because the government fiscal year, whenever the Fed
They're
sets
usually about
CPI,
a
it's
month.
online.
No, I don't, how's that any different than anybody else that has to budget for a contract? It's no
I've never
different.
seen anybody tied to an actual CPI.
Oh, all the contracts that we deal with. do.
Really?
Well, the
Yeah,
only,
I've never seen one, but that doesn't mean it.
the only one
We
that's
take an
tied to
average.
CPI right now is the foundation as far as the
Oh, yeah,
contribution they give at the time of closing. That's the only thing we have is.
I just-
tied to
I'm
CPI.
gonna be selfish. I'll say it out loud. I like it because it's fixed and the risk is, I hate to say it, it's on them.
Yeah,
Do a fixed number.
I like that.
Thanks.
Didn't mean to say it that way.
I'm just kidding. Obviously, we're a good partner. We will, work it out with whatever needs to be done.
She just said she'll take a 1%.
Oh, God.
I would not go below the 2, but I won't jack it up to 3.
Look at that.
How about that?
Jeez.
So,
Hold on,
uh-huh.
Gary, are you sharing pizza with Celia or are you just gonna keep it yourself?
I'm gonna have pizza.
You can have pizza.
Yes,
I can't,
help
Gary,
yourself.
he didn't mention it, so I.
The last,
I-
the last 2 small boxes are gluten-free. The rest are regular.
Okay.
Help yourself.
There you go. It's workshop.
It's theirs.
So my
I didn't
other,
ask permission. I just did.
my other suggestions of stuff to look at in the scope, number one was incorporating language about, we had set like SLAs on the My Celebration app. And I know that because we didn't own the app before, we didn't have a lot of the ownership responsibilities when we did the last contract. I think getting some language in there just about the ownership of that and just generally the maintaining the app. I know is something that you guys absorb. I'd like to acknowledge it as a formal requirement now that we're taking the time to amend the scope of work.
So we can add to the scope, obviously, management and ownership of the My Celebration app.
Yeah.
For the district. Okay,
So that was,
we can add that.
that was number one. Number two was, and this is a fuzzy one because the ownership of the vehicles. I know the district owns like the mules.
You own very minimal.
Most of the mules,
Yeah.
we own two.
And Infomark owns the rest.
And that's why I'd like to, and I appreciate that you guys are doing the right thing and bringing it up, but I'd like for the board to know that in the contract, what's the expectation for what we're gonna do, and especially as you grow out to Iowa Village, we're gonna need more mules, we're gonna need more trucks, things like that.
Mhm.
I'd like to identify it now as to what's the expectation as to picking up extra vehicles as we grow.
And we, as Infomark, already have a fleet of vehicles. All the trucks provided are from Infomark. We own them, maintain them, and all of that. The mules, the district maintains those. Anything that we have to do for mules, we have a budget line item for that. As far as new vehicles that come on, we already keep a line in the budget. I think it's 15,000 for a new vehicle.
New trucks or new mules?
No, mules.
New mules, okay.
You're not buying any trucks.
That's what
There's no reason for the district to have to purchase a vehicle. We have fleet.
We even own anything, this is news to me. We actually own.
Some of the mules we own.
Mules, you do.
We have somebody, we have a contractor operating our property,
Yes.
Mhm.
and that's.
Well, it's on your
that
district.
flag as an
It-
issue?
It's, I don't,
Is that a
that's
liability?
the way it was. Yeah, I mean, they're insured and we're insured, but it's also covered on your district insurance, those as assets.
So it's not, we're not exposed.
No.
You're doing due diligence.
Yeah, no, a valid question. But
Is that
yeah,
the concern though that you have?
how long has that been
Yeah.
where the district owned the
Usually
mules?
it's
Because it was,
Day
Well,
one.
I'm stocking barrel,
Oh.
whenever you have social management. It's all of theirs.
It's all theirs.
You know, they
Yeah.
have all on you.
no, you actually also own a lot of tools and equipment too. The district does.
That was gonna be my next question.
Trailers, backhoe,
Yeah,
all kinds of tools.
This-
Yeah, I'm only using
This-
that. If you
this
have
is a-
somebody in-house, you own your stuff.
But this is a hangover from the structure of the contract before when it wasn't performance-based. We bought the backhoe, the district bought the Cyclone, the
Yeah.
district bought mules.
that was all
Because
district.
We were looking at it as a staff augmentation where, hey, we own everything and we're gonna tell you what you're gonna pay your people and you're just gonna bring people in. Now we've
That's right.
done the last contract because we shifted it. we're
That
kind of
makes
gray
sense
area.
why it was there, where it is now.
There, I feel there's a disconnect. currently.
Well, and that's why I bring
Yes.
up the vehicles is, do we wanna overturn everything and what? This is the conversation we need to have. I would, listen, in an ideal world, I'd love to snap fingers and say, hey, guys, Infomark takes the mules, we somehow work that out in the finance piece of that. And we don't own mules. I would love it to be a outsourced
I
thing.
don't disagree because it seems kind of weird that 90% of the vehicles Infomark is writing.
Yeah.
And then we have the smallest subset.
I asked Russ when the mules, and he said from day one.
Well, and the other concern I have too is we have Infomark staff, or maybe you already brought this up and I missed it. You have Infomark staff on our mules, are they up to par? A replacement, not safe, I don't know.
And I'm sure they're
right?
doing the
And so,
right
like,
thing, but why are we assuming that liability?
Well, but
And-
that's-
and, yeah, and we
that's what I'm saying.
report it, we maintain
I'd be
them, we
entertaining
keep
that.
the maintenance up on them, but the district pays for the things that the district owns. When we do maintenance on the mules and stuff, that comes out of a district equipment line where anything Infomark supplies here, the trucks, and 2 other mules, and there's some other stuff that Infomark owns, we maintain that. It's not a cost to the district.
So if we were to,
I think the big thing too back in the day was save on taxes on everything.
because we're owning it.
Yard
Yeah.
tax exempt.
What was that? Sorry.
Over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has definitely
We can
saved.
save some money.
Yeah, you've definitely saved some money, but I think prior boards, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, they wanted to be able to
I
dictate
don't think it was a tax thing, I think it was a control. thing.
what was here, and then they could dictate. That's why Cliff Akey and them were like, we want an org chart. We want to know how much, down to the labor, the trash picker upper that we had. They wanted to know who it was, how much they made, everything. Like it was down that every agenda had an org chart in it with specific names in it of staff members.
So I'm always suspicious when we save money on taxes, because I always feel I'm gonna get hit somewhere else, right? It's normally, you buy an electric car, you could get the, yeah, but I'm also paying a premium for the car, so forget this tax savings, I would just, so I'm just wondering.
It's a little different with districts. We're considered, and this isn't just Celebration, it's across the board. It's by statute. You are tax exempt from paying taxes on sales tax on anything. Like even when we go to Home Depot, Infomark, your staff goes to Home Depot, we have a tax certificate that we show them. We don't pay taxes on anything that we buy
No,
for
I-
this district.
I understand that, but I guess what I'm thinking of is, which is all great, but let's say in the next 2 to 3 years, we have to replace 2 or 3 mules.
Well, would you want us to take responsibility for
That's
that?
what I'm
I don't know,
saying.
We're gonna have to.
I don't wanna have to think about it.
I
just
don't,
want
I
you
don't
guys
care
to
about the
replace
tax
me.
savings, because I have to replace 2 or 3 mules.
Right, so here's what
Right?
What Russ is talking about is, would the district rather replace them and get tax exempt or all that, or do you want us to bill it into your contract, which is gonna jack your contract up? Because
6.5%.
we're paying taxes
That's
and we're
6%.
supplying the equipment, where that's why your contract, we're able to keep it where it is, because we didn't buy that backhoe, we
Well,
didn't buy
and-
that,
But again, when you increase our contract, the majority of the increase in the contract isn't gonna be taxes.
No,
It's gonna be
from
for
the
the fact that
equipment.
it's the actual cost of the thing.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
At that point, that's just a shell game. I'm taking $10 out of here and I'm putting $10 over here.
Right, but you're gonna feel it in your contract is my point.
For sure.
That's all.
Thing is,
Well, it's
Yeah, I don't know.
simply, I just want assurances that Infomark utilizing CDD owned property
Mhm.
Does not expose us to anything from a liability perspective. If the
No.
answer is no,
Yeah, no.
then we should own everything because we can save tax on it.
Yeah, it does not expose you to any liability. Number one, every asset that you have is covered on your district insurance. They also know Infomark staff is driving and operating these equipment, mules, whatever it is. So, and then Infomark also has insurance, so.
But also remember too, 6% savings you're getting on a sales tax thing is all well and good up until one of the mules catches fire and blows up, at which point, from a district perspective, it's on their books.
Well, then all we do is what? All we do is file it on your insurance.
Well,
Yeah.
not if you guys own it. Now you're filing it on your insurance.
Right,
But what I'm saying is now it takes the responsibility for anything breaking, having to get replaced, getting to get more of them. Even though I'm gonna use the word nominal price increase because of the taxes. I like it because it's shifting the risk and the performance piece over to them.
But even if it's ours, we're
It's-
shifting
yeah.
it to them anyway. Not
exactly.
us, not you, me, or him, or you, or her.
No,
But the responsibility now becomes up to us to start budgeting, hey,
we already
I-
budget.
Island,
25,000.
but Island Village, if we need another mule, we need another this, we need another that.
If we need another, at that point, it's Intermark to buy it.
But they buy.
We're not gonna
buy-
buy any mules.
We're gonna charge 35,000.
That's
We're
right.
not
But
gonna
they
buy
buy it
it.
for us.
Wanted that.
Yeah.
We're definitely gonna mark it up
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
They're gonna buy it.
I understand that.
Well, now that Dave brought it up, yeah, they're gonna mark it up.
Well, I mean,
Good
that's
job,
just
Dave.
business.
What side is he on?
I'm decided that they should be providing human capital. Outside of that, we should own everything else.
And you already line item in your budget, and you have for years, well before I ever got here. The whole time Gary was here, you have an equipment line, because you do have equipment that has to be maintained. Y'all own pressure washers,
Thousands of dollars worth of.
generators,
Glad to
like
show you.
all of that back in those
So
cages,
then I'm gonna flip. I'm
the
gonna flip
district
script then.
owns.
Do we then wanna have the conversation going the other way? Are we talking about buying trucks because it's gonna be cheaper for us to do it? As
Absolutely.
opposed to them do it and we take it out of their contract, because if I tell them, you don't need to supply them from our trucks anymore, their $1 million is gonna go down to this. We're gonna absorb that, but now we as a board have to worry about the maintenance life cycle and replacement life
We're gonna
cycle.
do that anyway.
So one.
No, not for the trucks, you don't.
So one.
Y'all don't touch anything having to do, if one of our trucks, like the other day, Todd's truck, the transmission went out.
So what am I?
That's us.
So what am I?
You know what I mean?
You anyway, whether it's
Yeah.
our truck or your truck.
Yeah, you don't take any responsibility on for the fleet or even the mules that we own. Infomark pays for everything, maintenance, gas, everything. We pay for
I
that.
mean, even the fact that we've got some mules with them and some mules with us, we gotta figure out a split there.
Yeah,
So-
we have two.
I would like to see, if we do a budget. The budget, pretty much how it is right now, the split on vehicles, right? And what does it look like if you own mules, right? If
You, Infomark?
Infomark.
Okay.
So
right.
Infomark
I
owns
wanna see the
mules.
difference, because here's my thing.
Mhm.
So when we go through budget seasons, right? These mules are still going, they still can be fixed, but at one point, they're gonna die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can't,
We've always, not always, we have bought 4 new mules over the years.
correct, but.
The
four-
district
four
has.
mules. Okay, so 4 mules today
5.
is gonna be what? 110, 115,000 after it's all said and done, I don't know.
About $8,000 each.
Oh, they're only 8 grand each.
Well, the four seaters are more,
Well,
12.
Okay, so
That's still a lot less than.
right, but I'm curious to know when we're budgeting, we get to that, we're like, okay, we can only do this or this. We extended another year and now we're forced to make those hard decisions. But for me, I'm concerned about the safety of the staff. I wanna make sure they're riding on good vehicles, right? So I don't know, I like to see both, and if it's like not much of a difference, great. If it's, we gotta stay over there, at least the numbers will dictate where
How
we're.
many trucks do we have?
We can decide that. I just,
10?
I don't know,
I don't know what you're saying. I
well,
didn't follow.
well, you were at the budget meeting, right?
Vaguely
Okay.
remember something.
Vaguely remember that. So we had, originally, we were gonna add 2 mules and we talked about whether that be
Not
gas or
counting
electric,
Extra
right?
6, 7.
And,
So we have seven.
originally the ones that had all the lights and everything on them was
Utility side, not
25,000.
utility. So we have 7.
But we're gonna have a,
Not utility.
Street legal
Right.
compliance.
Street legal
That's my
compliance.
concern I have.
correct,
Was
was $25,000, okay, and we're thinking of getting 2. That would have added $50,000 on top of all the other stuff we're gonna do, because at one point, these are gonna get replaced the next 2 or 3 years, not all of them, but one here, one
Goes
there,
through the life
whatever.
cycle. Yep.
Right, so that is a very big deal. If it's merged into an Infomark contract, it won't be 25,000 a year. It'll be less, but it'll be in there. I just kind of want to see what we're looking at.
Less.
Yeah, it's.
They just said they need more, they're gonna attack us at least 6.5%. Because they pay the tax on
I
it.
want to see the numbers.
Okay, it's the number plus 6.5%,
I don't know what the numbers are.
And they're gonna change every year.
at least 6.5%.
I understand that.
Unfortunately.
One way or another, we're paying.
I
One way or another,
I
we're
agree
paying
with Tom,
for it.
I'd like to see what the
I
numbers.
just want to see what the
look
numbers
like.
look like, because it's stretched over. Look, it's gonna be stretched over periods of time. It's not gonna be, okay, here's 50,000 each year.
Why does it matter whether it's $100,000 Corvette or a paperclip? I don't get it. It's either we own it or they own it,
Right,
right? And if there's no issue with liability or exposure to us
There's not.
then we should own it and get the tax break.
because I don't wanna have to worry about life cycle maintenance. From a budget perspective, it's gonna be on them to do that, and fixed price.
No matter what, who owns it?
I understand that they're gonna be the ones doing the maintenance on it, but I'm saying from a contract perspective. If we put it into their contract and say, I wanna see a flat number, and they need to work out the amortization schedule for mules. I'm not gonna expect to see, hey, a line item in their contract that's an optional line item, hey, every time they need to buy a mule, it's $25,000. They're just gonna bake that into their number. Every year, that number increases 2%, and somewhere in the magic math of their total fixed price number, they figure out the mule fleet. That's it. I don't ever talk about mules again.
It simplifies it 100% if it's just a human capital contract, and everything else
I
is just a purchase that they take the certificate and they just pay, with that certificate, they don't have to pay tax on it.
So-
It's separate. from the
And
contract.
I
Maybe
agree with
this
that.
will help. The district owns everything other than 7 trucks and 2 mules. Infomark owns those. We maintain them. The district doesn't get charged for it. We absorb all responsibility for 7 trucks and 2 mules.
So Dave, are you
We've
saying
had
you
those
wanna pick
deals
up 7 trucks
I don't
and 2
think
mules?
it'd be a
whatever
big deal
they
if
do?
it was,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
I'm less concerned with what we got now than going forward. Every 100% should be purchased by the CDD.
Okay, when the next truck dies,
We buy it.
What truck?
any truck, any of the 7 you just owned,
Then
Why in the
Infomark
world
buys
would you
another
cut?
one.
because they've been doing it for 30 years.
Oh, you're asking if y'all buy it. Okay.
If a
But
truck
they said
catches, if a truck catches fire tonight and they
Yeah.
need to replace a truck,
We buy it.
So through attrition, you're suggesting, and I'm not against this, I just want to make sure I'm clear. You're saying through attrition, as the seven trucks and the 2 mules?
We have 7 trucks and 2 mules that own,
We-
Infomark
we
owns
buy
them,
and
maintain
they-
them, we do everything.
Then eventually we don't own them. Because theirs die and we replace it with ours.
Yeah, because what we do now is
No.
when they get to that point, when they reach, I don't know, 150,000 miles, something like that. Yeah, we depreciate and then we send it off to auction and we get a new truck.
So,
Like right now, we have 2 trucks coming.
so the thing is that here's my thought on this. We had a discussion 2 years ago, remember this, 2 years ago, where we wanted to upgrade mules,
Mule,
right? And we
yeah.
wanted to make them street legal.
Mm-hmm.
So how many mules do we have?
How many mules do we
How
have?
many mules does the district own?
Total.
I'd have to go there and count.
Give me a round number, give me 5.
5.
Okay, let's say 5.
How many are
Okay.
street legal?
Okay, no, that's why we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna buy 2. We're gonna make it street legal, and we're gonna go ahead and do it, okay?
And we still haven't done it.
So based on what Dave's saying, for 2 years, now we're entering our 3rd, we haven't upgraded.
You've talked about it.
Okay, so that means that we are never gonna end up doing this.
And that's why I say, because part of it is a non-monetary piece, because when we get to our budget year every year, we start taking a look at all the projects, and this is exactly what happened last year, and I was the one that put that at the top of the list, saying we need to get 2 street legal mules, and then getting cut, because we ended up doing sidewalks instead. If we just bake it into their number, it's done, I don't ever talk about that again.
So here's the deal. It's not whether we're gonna do what you want or I want, I just wanna see the numbers. I just wanna
This
see
is-
the numbers, and I
so-
might agree with you.
I think this is 2 separate things. We can, I think, let's get the contract down, whatever scope. And then what we can do is I can bring the numbers back at a later date. And if we need to amend the contract or what have you, we absolutely can. But I think right now we should probably leave it the way that it is.
And then, well, what is it right now then?
There is no language, it's silent, that's the problem.
About what?
About purchasing property and equipment.
No, and you wouldn't put that in your contract. There's no district contract that has that language in it, nor would you put it in there because it's based on your budget. You budget for certain things, like y'all put in your budget for a mule, let's just say. You've had in your budget for the last 3 or 4 years, $15,000 in case a new mule needs to be purchased. So then Russ comes to you and goes, hey, we've repaired that mule 5 times.
You need a new one.
We need a new one. And the board goes, okay, great,
Great.
done.
You go out and you buy them.
And we buy a mule with your tax exempt certificate,
Great.
and then the district owns another mule. I add it to your insurance, like I always would, and then we're done.
And you guys operate it.
Yeah.
And there's no liability exposure to us.
That is correct.
Beautiful. That's exactly.
Example is I've got one at the Kawasaki place right now. It's been over there for over 2 months.
Mhm.
Needs a clutch.
Yeah.
It's a little bit over model, $2,000. I'm about ready to call them and say, just don't even order it because I'm not
So
waiting
you're
around.
Right.
you're gonna run 2 scenarios, and what I'm hearing is, one, shifting it all one way.
Mhm.
If your contract were to descope from any trucks and any mules, and you were to take them all out, and
Mm-hmm.
we would assume them through attrition, what would that number look like? And then the other way, if you guys take all the trucks and the mules.
So phase out all Infomark provides and owns.
Yep.
To the district. And again, over years, as a truck craps the bed.
Yeah.
We don't send it off to auction and get a new truck like we are now. That's what we do. Instead, I come to the board and say, okay,
You need a new truck.
the transmission's out, we're down a truck.
Yep.
And you guys would buy one,
Yes.
okay? All right, I just want to make sure. So phase out all Infomark owned to the district over time
And then
and what that looks
and then
like.
option 2 is the exact opposite. If we give you guys all the mules and all the trucks, what does that number look like?
Do we have an option of leaving it the way it is now too?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
that should definitely be.
All mules,
First off.
Yeah.
Because-
Well, we already know what that looks like.
I mean, you have to keep in mind too, it's really the mules, right? That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
do you want me to go through the equipment, like
It'd be all the equipment.
I mean, it's every piece of equipment out there.
Don't look at me. They're the ones asking.
I mean, I
think
don't
just
know
what
that
you're doing now.
you would say, okay, Infomark here, all of this equipment now belongs to you. I don't. Okay,
Okay.
so we're just talking about mules and
That's
trucks.
all we're talking about.
Okay,
That's all we're talking about.
all mules to
It is
Infomark.
complicated, as usual.
No, I'm actually simplifying it. They do everything.
All
I
right,
think it's a fun-
with 16 minutes left, the other two things I
Okay.
had was,
But this is separate. This is not gonna hold up what we're trying to accomplish with the contract. If we need to come back and do an amendment later.
you can bring that back to the next meeting and we can discuss it and figure out as the
Okay.
negotiations go on.
So right now, we've added to the scope is ownership and maintaining of the My Celebration app.
Yeah.
And what else are we doing?
That drill right there. The other two things I had was number one, the number of certified operators we have. Oh, there's one. For like the high lift and the skid steers, it just, when we were out with the hurricane, and I was talking to Russ and he was saying the high lift, you guys don't have one certified operator, and the skid steers, I think you had 3. Just with, it's never a problem until it's a problem with the hurricane. Is there a way we can
Yes,
get more people? that
I've
are
already
certified?
talked to our health and safety.
Really.
I've already
It doesn't need
talked
to be
to,
everybody.
I've already talked to
For the
John
skid
Caffey.
steers
He's gonna come out and do a class and certify all of our staff to do cross-train on everything. And that's just a matter of having John Caffey of our health and safety department come out and do that.
Okay, and the last thing,
Kubota, the guy was here for 2 hours doing
Yeah.
training with him.
Yep. So very simple.
the last thing I would like to add is some scope language about the public communications piece, again, because we've added on since the last contract between our Facebook page, the My Celebration stuff, and I know you guys are all doing that just sort of ad hoc. You just said, hey, you can absorb it into the contract, but I would like to add language in there, that being a requirement.
So ownership of and maintaining My Celebration app and Facebook app.
And just generally on the communications piece.
That's all we communicate on.
Yes,
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. So My Celebration app and Facebook app. And then certified operators.
Yep.
You want that in there? What do you want in there? Like how many, or you're requiring so many? Like, what do you want in there?
I don't think we need a contract language.
I mean, to me, that's on us. If it hinders us doing our job because we don't have, then that's
fine.
something,
That's fine, you're right.
you know,
That's fine.
that's something you would evaluate.
Yep. that's
Right?
fine. Okay, that was all I had.
So those are Greg's 2, which is ownership of and maintaining the My Celebration app and Facebook app. Does anyone have anything else to add to the scope? No? Now, are you good with I'm taking out this is a separate piece that I'm gonna budget out for you guys, okay? I'm talking about right now to get the contract. Are you good with the other language, which is a 2% increase, escalation every year?
1%.
Minimum.
Nope,
Yeah.
nope.
No,
So 2%,
2%.
and then also 2% on the building, the rent that we
Yeah.
pay.
Right, that's just tight.
So that stays the same? Is everybody good with that? Okay, so other than those 2 scope additions and the 2% remains the same on the building rent and the escalation, is there any other changes that you want to see other than, I don't know if I heard everybody, are you looking for a 4-year or a 3-year or a 2-year?
Max it out, 4 years at least.
4 years with 1 extension, which would bring you to 5 years? Okay. So 4-year, 1 extension, optional. And then obviously, I was explaining before you got here, they always have the 30 or the 60-day. So that stays the same.
So I'm not retiring anytime soon.
Not allowed to.
He's not on the roof. He was on the roof last week.
Is that in the contract?
Yeah, Russ and Carrie cannot leave until like, I don't know, 2030, 35,
2035.
2035. There you go. All right.
Having a box of pizza and walking out the door.
Any-
We're going at the same time.
Yeah. They're walking out together. Anything else besides that?
That's good.
So what we talked about before you got here is these additions to the scope.
Mhm.
Those are the only 2 additions. We're gonna do a 4-year contract with a 1-year optional to extend. The 2% stays in. So what we'll do is I'll provide you the actually 5-year price, and then add these 2 additions to the scope, and then we'll be able to put that together and finalize that piece. But then the other piece that they're asking is I'm going to present to them 2 separate budgets, contract pricing rather. One is for Infomark to turn over, or over a course of the 4 or 5 years, is get rid of the fleet that we have, that we own and maintain. And every time one kind of craps out, the district purchases a truck or replacement for that. So basically the district's gonna own everything. which obviously would change the contract price. And I don't know what that looks like. And then the other example that I'm gonna do is if Infomark owns everything. Mules, mules and trucks. That's all we're talking about, not no equipment or anything like that.
And sorry, going back to the length of the contract fees, because you said about 4 different things. I want to make sure we're agreeing as far as starting on the 1 October start date. Does that make it then a 5.5-year contract because we need the half year to get to October and then we're doing 5 years after that?
So they like the contract, like this one, we approved it in December. It was fully executed in February. They would like it to run, which makes sense. And that's how all my other contracts run is fiscal year,
Yeah.
October 1 to September 30th. I mean, again, it's not gonna make a difference for your budget because your budget is what it is from October to September. But so we can paper it to go into effect October 1, but we have that maybe addendum that we can add to this contract that says
Extend the current contract.
you're going on 6 months under
Yeah.
this, and then October 1 starts your new this one. And we can put in the addendum this scope as well. It's just two additions, which we've already been doing anyway. So we can put these 2 items in the addendum and we're operating under right now. And then the new contract that we're gonna execute with these would start October 1. Is that good?
And then the other thing
Right.
is the increase of staff along with availability.
The trigger points.
The trigger points being when we take over properties.
Yeah, I'll get pricing for adding additional staff. And then we'll have trigger points of Island Village phase, whatever, then we would come to the board and it's already in the contract, but they would need to approve it for us to put it into motion.
Do you think, I'm not trying to invite you to get more staff, but you mentioned field staff increasing. I mean, obviously Island Village coming on is gonna bring another 1,000 homes in total, 1,100 homes. Do you think you need any more back office staff to keep pace as well? Open-ended question, take a look.
Yeah, that's something we'll evaluate, and what I'll do is I evaluate that as they're coming on and as your budget cycle comes up, so then I can have those conversations during the budget cycle, because that would be outside of this contract back office stuff. We can put it in here if you want, the same as trigger points, because we have so much other staff that sometimes I can pull staff to do stuff, so I don't necessarily need to add it to your contract per se. Does that make sense?
No,
Okay, well, I can do that.
we're paying for the back office staff out of the contract and again, we're paying for the functions. We're not paying for people.
Mhm.
We're paying for the functions to be accomplished. I just want to make sure that you're accommodating, because we talked about the field.
Yeah,
piece.
I can tell you,
Yeah.
I can add 2 more people to the staff very easily today.
Well,
One just for go-go.
Yeah, one just for GoGo, quite honestly.
and I'm not looking to increase our costs, but on
Yeah.
the same token, if we took the time to put the tool out there and we're telling the community it needs to be effective, now that we're fully running with it, I'd much rather you tell me I need a $40,000 a year person marked up for whatever it is to make the tool effective and make it work, as opposed to us sitting here saying, no, I needed another guy.
Yep.
So
Person.
thank you.
Yeah.
Women.
It may not be a guy. We could definitely use another office staff. I don't necessarily know it needs to be done today, but I would say pretty much over the next 6 to 8 months, that would be a great tool. If the board said absolutely not, do with what you have, I can make it work.
Well, but again, from my perspective, it's performance-based against the statement of work.
Yep.
You tell us what you need for headcount in order to hit what's in here.
Yes, within the next 6 months, I will say I will be adding an office staff.
Customer service is priority.
That's right.
Yes.
And GoGov is a lot, I
Yes.
will say. It's a
Do you know
lot.
how many people have downloaded it?
I might have to look into the system, but yeah, we can tell.
1 million people.
No, it's under,
It's about 356.
yeah, it's 360.
Yeah.
At
At the last time I looked,
But I think since the hurricane, there's a lot of people using it.
yeah.
A lot of people.
Every day seems to be growing a little bit, but right now, the last time I looked, which was, I think our last GoGov, which was about a month ago, month and a half ago, there were about 356.
Yep.
Which
Well-
isn't a lot in the
Well-
grand scheme of things.
What were we, Tom, do you remember where we're at in cell service when it was kind of crazy? It was a lot more than 300.
It was. I do not know. But, okay, but you have to,
See, that makes me scared as far as if you're
Well,
telling me
there's-
now,
okay,
GoGov's already a
so-
full-time job and that's with only 350
Yeah.
people.
so,
That scares me if all of a sudden we catch fire and
so
1,000,
there's,
2,000 more people sign up.
there's a lot more data than this. Okay, so when you look at cellular service, there were more people that use cellular service on the Croa side than the CCD side,
Mhm.
right? So that's number one. Also, more people than us seem to want to call us directly than
Yes.
they do to actually use the app.
Mhm.
Okay, so, whether it's confusion or not understanding or whatever, that seems to be the case. Some call and then use the app. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a combination of that. I think it's gaining momentum. We need to do a major marketing push.
And that's why I put the communications piece. I'm not just trying to add language in saying, hey,
Right.
I want to have somebody with aggressive things. So
Yeah, should be in there.
We need to be more aggressive as a board on the communications piece of pushing things out there. And I agree with you.
And part of the problem is that when if people call in, they'll say, I'm having a problem with my tree, right? Sometimes they don't tell you who they are, or the address is, or phone number, they'll just hang up.
Right.
I don't know what the heck we do with that, right? Where they open a case, a ticket, you can put all the detail in, the
Right.
perception and everything, and they can respond to them.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that.
With the utility bills, can we put a little piece of paper in there says to use GoGov or something like that?
We can definitely do that. I can have, well, we
A lot
don't
of
send
people-
out the utility bills. Muni does, I think. Is it
but a lot
Muni?
of people, I'll never get a bill because I just get the email.
Yeah,
I understand what you're doing, but that's one source, and I'm also thinking that anytime that anybody comes and registers with Crow to become a member of Crow, they ought to get a piece of paper that says GoGov on it.
we can
Right.
push it out as
Myself.
many. Yeah, we can push it out as much as we possibly can, and we'll start maybe once a week, send out a message on. Won't do any good to send it out on the app, but on Facebook,
I think
You
a
know?
couple things, and then we
Yeah.
can work together.
that's fine.
All right.
Okay, so again, these are the things we're gonna put into the scope. And I'll work with Jan and Jay to get that in, and it'll come to your November meeting for you guys to look at it, and I'm hoping that I'll have these numbers for you as well.
The only other thing I was gonna ask, and this would be minor, but like, it just made me think about it with the enterprise side with the utility bills.
Mhm.
Would enterprise be interested? So if we did add like a communications person or a GoGov person, would that be something that enterprise would cost share with us?
Yes.
Okay.
And and I wasn't gonna bring this up till the November meeting, but being that this is what you're already asking for, so my plan was to add another admin and have enterprise pay 50-50. 50% of their salary would be allocated in your contract, and then 50% enterprise would pay.
We split anything else?
You already pay, like enterprise pays Celebration, I think $20,000 a year for a portion of Russ's time. And- Huh?
I think I just approved that the other day.
Yeah,
Yep.
because every year, it's only billed annually at the end of the fiscal year, so we pay, enterprise pays Celebration 20,000, and that's like for 10% of Russ's time and 10% of like our front desk person.
You're also paying like 20% of the security line item. For the sheriff's department.
They're paying their part of security. They also pay rent to the district as well. So Enterprise does. So Enterprise, us, and United, all three of us pay rent to the district for office space. So yes, to answer your question, I'm gonna ask them to split an additional admin. That's why I wasn't gonna bring it up to your next meeting. Because administratively, just with the more work orders that are coming in, the GoGov app, and even would be a great tool when Renee's out with utilities. If she goes on vacation or something, then we have that person that can help with people that come in with utility bills. So to pay 50-50, I think it is fair. And I think they have no problem with it. I mean, they pretty much agree to splitting anything that
Right.
is the benefit. They're already agreed to split the My Celebration app. So
If the community needs it, they're taxing, we're taxing.
yeah,
at the end of the
I
day.
think it's fine. So that's my plan.
Okay,
Okay.
1 minute left. Workshop adjourned.
I think so. So we'll do this one. These will be in your contract for those two people, one for Island Village and one an admin person, but the admin will be 50% enterprise. So you only see 50% of that.
Move to adjourn.
All right, got a second?
All right.
All
It's a
right.
workshop. You don't even need to adjourn.
Just did. Too late, too late. 30 seconds.
You have a couple of minutes before we start again.